ሰላም ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ የሄለን ሾው 25ኛው ሲዝን መጀመሪያ ፕሮግራማችን ዛሬ ነው ማለት ነው። ይሄ እንግዲህ የምናስተላልፍላችሁ ዝግጅት በየአመቱ በዚህ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ ኤምፓወር ዘ ኮሚኒቲ ዊኬንድ የሚባል ዝግጅት አለ። ኮንቬንሽን ሴንተር ውስጥ ነው የሚካሄደው የዝግጅት የዚህ አመት 7ኛው አመታዊው ዝግጅት ነው። በዚህ ፕሮግራም ላይ የተለያዩ ዲስከሽኖች እናደርጋለን። ብሬክአውት ሴሽንስ አሉን። እንደዚሁም ደግሞ የተለያዩ ምርትና አገልግሎታቸውን የሚያስተዋውቁ ኢትዮጵያውያኖች ኤርትራውያኖች የሚሳተፉበት ነው። ዋናው መድረካችን ላይ በጣም ጠቃሚ የሆኑ ዲስከሽንስ አሉ። ከዛሬ የመጀመሪያው የምናቀርብላችሁ the importance of self care የሚባል ነው። self care ስንል እንደው የውበት ነገር ሳይሆን መንፈሳችንን አይምሮአችንን እንደዚሁም ደግሞ spiritually ራሳችንን እንዴት አድርገን ነው ማሳደግ የምንችለው የሚለውን ሐሳብ የሚነጋገሩበት ዝግጅት ነው ማለት ነው። ኢትዮጵያውያኖችና ኤርትራውያኖች ብቻ ሳይሆን አሜሪካኖችም ከሌላም አገር ያሉ ሰዎች የሚታደሙበት ዝግጅት ስለሆነ ቆይታው ሁሉ የሚሆነው በእንግሊዝኛ ነው። እንግዲህ ከቀድሞ ይሄንን ላሳውቃችሁ ፈልጋለሁ። እንደምትማሩበት እኛ ጠቃሚ ነገር እንዳገኘንበት እናንተም እንደምታገኙበት በመተማመን ነው። እንግዲህ እስቲ ወደ ፕሮግራሙ ልሰዳችሁ።
Thank you for coming. We're going to kick off our power panel discussions. And the first, I'm actually going to bring out one of our sponsors, Naya Alamaye with Kafita. She's a real estate broker here in the DMV and the head of U.S. operations for Rockstone Ethiopia, the developer behind Kafita. She's going to come and introduce our first panel, taking care of you, the art of self-care, because we know we all need to know how to take care of ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and these ladies are going to share how they do what they do. All right, so Naya, come on up and introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to sponsor and be here for now the second year. For those of you who may have not heard about Kafita before, it is a green residential building currently under construction in the Signal neighborhood of Addis Ababa. We're very excited. Last week we poured the last of our concrete on the 20th floor. For more information, our table is just over there. You can come and ask us whatever you'd like to know. It's a pleasure to be introducing the first power panel at the 7th Empower Community Weekend, taking care of you, the importance of self-care. Madden Shate Jones, the founder of Love Madden and owner of Love Goods Company, will be moderating the panel. Eden Shafarao Glenn, bodybuilder, IT, and cybersecurity professional. Dalina Medin, celebrity makeup artist, beauty expert, producer, and host, as well as Yane Damto, salon owner, business mentor, and celebrity hairstylist, and Hermela Solomon, content creator. Welcome to the stage.
Perfect. So we heard a little bit about the respective backgrounds and careers of the women up here today. All of you work in fields from hair care and skin care to fitness and fashion. And so when we think about self-care, sometimes we think about the external, but we well know that self-care and soul care is an inside job. So I would love to hear each of your definitions of self-care to kind of set the tone and what it really means to practice self-care from the inside out. So Eden, I'll start with you.
Sure. When we think about self-care, for most of us, the first thing that jumps out of our mind would be bubble bath, massage, or you know, something related to that. But when we define what self-care is, it goes more than that. Physically, emotionally, as well as spiritually. Mm-hmm. It all includes that. So taking care of us inside, mm-hmm. inside out. What does it require? Self-care is not a luxury. It has to be a lifestyle.
That's right.
It has to be a lifestyle. Nothing we can negotiate with.
Yeah.
So I can see that.
Perfect. Delina, same question?
Yeah, so when I think about self-care, I think about, similar to you, I think about just like a holistic approach. For me, it's about like meditation, it's about physical activity, it's about connecting your mind to your body.
Yeah.
I think it's really great that you said that it's not about like, although I do love a nice bubble bath.
You love a bubble bath.
Right? It is nice and it can help you like relax, but I think it's really about figuring out what's in your mind and how to like relax your nervous system.
Yeah.
And the way I do that is through like working out and also through meditation, journaling, that type of stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I agree with both Eden and Delina. The only thing I would add in, for me, self-care also incorporates social detox. So I do try after a certain period of time when I get home to ensure that I am logging off and disconnecting and kind of really being with myself. Meditation, yoga, working out, eating good, feeling good, all that good stuff is a part of it. But I also think that for me, the biggest part is making sure that your mental is where it needs to be. And I think in a day and age where we're so consumed with information, it's just figuring out a way to disconnect, especially as a business owner. My mind is always thinking about what's next or what I could do, or if I had this moment, I could take care of this other task. So just kind of like putting my phone down and kind of just being present and being with myself.
Yeah.
So I agree with all three of you beautiful ladies. Being someone that's job is mainly on their phone and social media, just like you said, Yenna, is finding ways to let go of the pressure of society and just being able to detox from seeing all that information that you get on a day-to-day basis. So I love working out, spending time with family and friends to kind of remind myself of who I am and the things that I love. So yeah, I would agree that detox and finding ways to move my body and helping my mind relax from all the information I consume.
Yeah, those are all great definitions, and it's important for us to know that self-care is personal, right? Just like what you would do to care for someone else, it depends on who's the recipient. How you care for your partner versus how you care for your child versus how you care for a parent, their needs are different. So in order to care for yourself, you really have to understand who you are. Spending time with your authentic self, having the quiet time, setting those boundaries are all very important. So since we're talking about sort of the practical aspects of it, if each of you could just tell me your one top self-care practice, something that you cannot go without, what would that be? So we defined what it is, but what are the things that you do, or what is the thing that you do that's most important? And I'll kick it off by starting. Mine is journaling. Even where I got the name Love Madden is my signature on my journal. Whether it's a prayer, whether it's a worry, whether it's gratitude, I'm always gonna put pen to paper and write it down, and that's a release for me. So that is my top self-care practice. So we'll start on this end and go this way. So Eden, you have time.
I would say for me, putting love and effort into myself is very important. So whether that be doing a detox and maybe a deep condition for my hair, spending that extra 30 to an hour to myself on that day allows my mind to kind of relax and quiet any of those anxious thoughts in my mind. Yeah. So I would say self-care would be a mask, a deep condition, something like that.
Yeah.
Choosing myself is probably like the one thing I can't live without. Being a service provider, we're so quick to like, clients come in and sit in our chair as a stylist and they pour all of their life onto you. And for me, it's extremely important to take the time that when a client comes in to remember what they're talking about and to be engaged and give them my undivided attention. And so it's hard not to take that back home with you and to be like, oh, this client said this and they're going through this. So putting myself first, and like every morning I used to be the person who would set my alarm and 45 minutes later I would be out the door. But allowing myself that extra hour to just be present, to take my time, to have grace with myself, to connect with myself is extremely important, and just prioritizing me and the things that I need for my day, just as much as I prioritize what I need for other people.
Is that something that came easy to you? Because I know that can be challenging for people. Or is that something you had to learn to do?
It was something I had to learn to do, and it was something after I got married, my husband really was like, I don't understand, like, why are you rushing out the house? He was like, you're not eating breakfast. Eating breakfast in the car is not eating breakfast. He was like, you need to sit down and have breakfast and then leave the house. And it was just about putting into practice these habits that I wanted to make time and make myself a priority.
That's good.
Okay, so I will say physical movement is a big thing for me. Like, and it's funny because my sister's here right now, but like she had started me on this, like, it doesn't need to be big, it could just be like go for a walk, and she like started doing this like 45 minutes in the morning. As soon as you get up, go and walk. And for me, I would be like, oh, I gotta go to the gym, I gotta get it in, I gotta like, you know, lift all these heavy weights, it's gotta be intense for me. And she was like, no, just get something in, get some kind of movement in. And I feel like that just like recenters me. It is really hard for me to say not journaling, because I know you said journaling, and journaling is like such a close second.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, figuring out how to move even a little bit every day is so centering.
Eden?
Yes, I can add to that. The physical aspect of self-care is very, very important. Physical activity, when you go to a doctor, they will tell you to exercise, because exercising it has so many benefits. It improves our quality of life, longevity. It improves our brain health, heart. I mean, as you know, as you all know, heart disease is one of the leading cause of death in the country. And then by exercising, we can lower our cholesterol, obesity, as well as other related diseases that comes, towards heart disease. So exercising is one of the ways to, and not only that, to add to that, stress.
Yeah.
Most of us suffer with, from stress. It could be, raising kids, family, relationship, job, and other aspects of life.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with stress?
Yeah.
Stress can kill you.
Yeah.
So, dealing with stress, when we exercise, we release those happy hormones. And it improves our life, our quality of life, and our even attitude, mental health, and everything. So I just want to add to that.
Yeah, that's great. It's oftentimes the simplest things, right? Like Yene said, just eating your breakfast, drinking enough water. Like when we think about what it takes to nourish our bodies and care for our bodies and how we were created to exist, a lot of times we will sacrifice those things for others, which is kind of a pivot into my next question. One of the benefits of caring for ourselves is that allows us to show up as a better, insert name here, right? It allows me to show up as a better Madden. It allows me to show up as a better wife, as a better business owner, as a better mother. One of the things I noticed in motherhood is that I would often, and still do this, put the needs of my child before myself, and I'm sure other mothers and women can relate. But what I'm learning is that I really end up being better for her and more patient with her and kinder to her when I take care of myself first, and she's not getting the last little bit of me. And so I would love to hear about what are the things that you all do to refill yourself and refresh yourself so that you have enough overflow to pour into others. When we think about refreshing someone's glass and we're filling a pitcher up, we don't want to give people the last drop, right? Like we want to be filled up so that we have enough to pour into others.
Azi Flowers ነው የሚባለው ድርጅታችን ሰላም ዌዲንግ ፕላነር
At Yenga Story, we do storytelling. S25, Brown Financial.
ፒካስ ኮሌክሽንስ ሃንድሰም ስኪን ፈትል ዲዛይን ይባላል ኤላዝ ቢቲ ስካድማስ ይባላል ሬድ ፋክስ ስፓይስስ እንባላለን ኢንዳስትሪያል ዲዛይን
CDI 24 Training Center
ሚሚ ባቅላባ አስቶፒያ ይባላል ጄቼ ወይም ጊቭ ሆፕ አፍሪካ
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል የምትመለከቱት ያላችሁት በኤምፓወር ዘ ኮሚኒቲ ዊኬንድ ጁላይ 1 ላይ እዚህ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ በተካሄደው ቆይታ the importance of self care የሚለውን ፓወር ፓነል ዲስከሽን ነው እስቲ ወደዛ እንግዲህ ደሞ ልመልሳችሁ
How has caring for yourself allowed you to care better for those that you love? And I'll start with you this time, Eden.
Sure. Of course, not because I'm in bodybuilding, but the physical aspect of self-care plays a big role for me. I call it my stress reliever, my therapy, my professional job it's a very demanding, very stressful job that I have, and I have to maintain my sanity.
Yeah.
One way that I can do is through exercising, so I can manage my stress. When my stress level is stressed, I can have a better mood. I can be joyful to the ones that I'm around with. If you're not happy with yourself, or if you're not happy with how you feel, that also can be transferred to the next person.
That's right.
So you have to, you really have to pay attention to that.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Delina?
I would say, like, you know how sometimes you go through the entire day and then you get towards the end of the day and you start to feel a little like, okay, I know I have like 3 or 4 more hours to go. For me, my recalibration at that point, because I'm good in the morning up until like later in the afternoon, I have to meditate. So I just take like 20 minutes and I'm like close my eyes, stay there and completely just center myself. And there's something about that, it just gives you more energy. And also I love to take a nap if I can, to be honest. Just to be honest, like if you're not feeling like the energy is moving in a positive way, or like, you know, the momentum is going in it's like, let's just hit a reset button, take a nap, even if it's like quick, 20 minutes, it'll help get you, you know, back together. So that's what I do.
So you've mentioned meditation twice now.
Yeah.
So for someone who might not know, what does meditation even mean, right? Like people probably have a vision of what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it manifests in different ways, but like what does meditation mean to you? And what are some examples if someone is like, okay, I want to try that tonight. What is something simple that someone can do to get started?
Yeah, there's so many different ways to meditate. There are, you know, you can do different apps like simple listening guided meditation. I started practicing a thing called TM, Transcendental Meditation, a few years ago, and you get a mantra, and it's more about focusing on internal silence. So I could do it anywhere. I could do it here with everybody looking at me, just close my eyes and I could be in it, which is something that I really enjoy. I live in New York City. It's one of the busiest cities in the world, and I feel like if you don't make time for meditation, and it's not like outside of my apartment, it's like birds chirping, you know? So being able to sit with myself quietly, it helps you just kind of recalibrate. But there's so many different ways you can do it. You just have to do what suits your personality.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because some of our cultural and even religious sort of practices have roots that are very similar in the feeling of meditation, right? Prayer is a form of that, just quieting yourself, you know, repeating hymns and mantras, those kind of things take us into that same space. And so I think it's something that exists in our community, but we just maybe don't put the same name to it. But it's something that allows us to sort of go inward or go upward and really recenter ourselves. So I love that you shared that. Yeah. Yene?
Refilling my cup, as strange as it sounds, is boundaries. Creating boundaries is the best way for me to refill my cup. I have found that I'm so quick to fill my calendar. I'm a calendar person. If it's not on my calendar,
it ain't
not
happening.
It's not life. And I mean, I put everything on my calendar, to like date night with my husband, to time to do something for myself, to pedicures, to manicures, to anything that I'm doing, a massage, a facial, anything that I am doing has to go on my calendar. And it has allowed me to create boundaries, particularly because there will come a point where, like yesterday, I went into the salon, I had a 10 o'clock appointment and that is it, and I had the afternoon booked. And a long-standing client was like, ooh, I really want to cut my hair off today. And she was seeing another stylist. She's like, is there any way you could cut my hair into a bob? And I'm like, I mean, unless I could do it right this second, like right now, I can't do it. And she's like, please, you can't just stay a little bit longer. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, I have things, like today is my day for myself, for me to do what I need to do. And I have those worked into my day every single day. So every single day I have a 15-minute break. And it's as simple as implementing it and putting it into practice it's just not about saying, oh, I'm going to put a 15-minute break on my schedule. It's about taking the 15 minutes. And, people will be like, hey, can I ask you? And I'm just like, give me a second. I need a moment. Like I'm having a moment for myself just to kind of regroup, recenter myself, and then I can answer or address whatever it is that you need.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Boundaries are so important, and a lot of times we're taught that it's important to be nice, to show up as being nice to others. But really, I think what's more valuable is being kind. And I think that we can show up as being kind to others when we're kind to ourselves. And part of that is practicing those boundaries that allow us to be refreshed, that allow us to be restored, and knowing that self-care is not selfish. And sometimes those things are equated, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Practicing self-care makes us a better person for ourselves and for others. So I love that you talked about boundaries in a way that, oftentimes it's not accepted. Culturally, there's so many times where people are going to push your boundaries or guilt you or shame you into doing something that ends up depleting you, and you're not able to show up as a great friend or family member. So I love the way that you really framed self-care in terms of boundaries. That's important, and it's something we need to hear. All right, Hermela?
I would say one way I practice self-care would be putting myself first. So I can piggyback off of what you're saying. Coming from a first-generation family, being the eldest in the family, you tend to say yes to helping with a lot of things. Aside from family, I can be a yes person. So if my friends, loved ones, coworkers need help, I jump to help immediately. And I really realized that my self-care and self-love was depleting. I didn't leave time for myself during the day, during the months, and either I'd gain weight. I put on about 25 pounds during COVID. I didn't put myself first. Fitness has always been a really big part of my life. And so I kind of let myself go by kind of filling everyone else's cup before myself. Yeah. So learning to say no and realizing that's not selfish was kind of a hard quality and thing to learn about myself. So learning to say no is my biggest way I can provide self-care and love to myself.
Yeah, it's amazing how, you know, learning to say no is what helps you to show up as better for other people.
Exactly.
Right? It's definitely a shift in our thinking and our mindset that I think is really important to underscore. So I'm going to stick with you for a second. So you're a content creator. This requires a lot of work, not just in the planning and the editing and the strategizing, but it really requires you physically to show up. Like, you have to be present, you have to be seen. That's your work. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you resist some of the pressure that comes along with being in the public eye, always showing up, always being available and accessible, and how you find ways to really tap into your authentic self when you're not in front of the camera?
100%. So when I started content creation, it was all about natural hair, how to maintain, love, embrace, and be your true self to your family and friends. And so what I had to unlearn within myself is that my hair did not represent me. It was not my definition of who I am. And I had to unlearn that I can go to formal events without my hair being out and perfect and curly and defined. I now wear different styles. Today I have a slick back bun. I think for me it's important to realize that what's on the inside is who I am, and not my appearance, my hair, my makeup is not what defines me being a good person. So I think just remembering that and just putting all that love into myself is how I maintain it. You know?
Yeah, that's really important. And we've talked about, you know, hair and weight and some of these other things and how they play into how we feel about ourselves. And I know you and I talked backstage about even my journey of just embracing my natural gray hair. It's not something that's really embraced in our community, and it's something that I had some trepidation about doing in my 30s, but it's who I am. And I think once I was able to unlock that, I was really able to love like myself authentically on the inside and the outside. And it's not an easy road, but people like you are great examples for young women to be able to see what it really truly means to love ourselves inside and out. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Hair Epilepsy Ethiopian. Kuta Fashion now. Lal is behind promoting Ethiopian honey. Ruby Balal. Alliance Care Now ይባላል.
Artec Solution.
African inspired ታሪኩንና ሂስትሪውን ሁሉ የሚገልጽ ጁለሪ ብራንድ ነው።
አቡጌዳ ስኩል ለማስተዋወቅ ነው እዚህ የመጣ ነው። ሆት ሶስ ካምፓኒ የተለያዩ ጎልድ ፕሌትድ ጁለሪ ነው የምናቀርበው።
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። የምትመለከቱት ያላችሁት በኤምፓወር ዘ ኮሚዩኒቲ ዊኬንድ ጁላይ 1 ላይ እዚህ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ በተካሄደው ቆይታ the importance of self care የሚለውን ፓወር ፓነል ዲስከሽን ነው። እስቲ ወደዛ እንግዲህ ደሞ ልመልሳችሁ።
Okay, so Yene, a few years ago, your career made a very public transition from working behind the scenes in a high-profile role to really being catapulted in the public eye in still a very high-profile role. So talk to us about how, and you talked a little bit about boundaries, so you've been teasing it for us, but how did you manage the demands on your time, your energy, your calendar when you were beyond capacity? And if you can talk to us a little bit about how you decided and when you made the transition to start to establish those healthy boundaries and put those things in place.
Boundaries. You know, I think for me, what I had to do is, similar to what Hermela said, I work with high-profile individuals, and I had to realize that they don't define me, and my affiliation to them is not who makes me who I am. And there was a lot of pressure and demand, and I found that there was an influx of clients, and there was an influx. People were showing up to the salon to take pictures. People were showing up to the salon just to see who was there. And it was one of those things where I was just kind of like, if you aren't here authentically for the service that we provide, then we aren't the space or place for you. And really having to, I worked so hard in my career for many years up until that moment. No one knew who I worked with, really. I mean, there was chatter, but it wasn't like out there the way that it was out there. And so it was one of those things where it's just kind of like, stick to who you are, stick to the boundaries that you have. And for people who knew me, who have met me post that public spectacle, they're just like, oh, you're this way because of this. And I'm like, no, I've been this way. Like, I've always kind of been this way. I've always had these rules. I've always had these boundaries. I've always kind of been like, this is what it's going to be, or this is what it's not going to be. And kind of just staying true to that, and just remembering, as Hermela said, who you are. You know, like, I'm not here, I work with celebrities, yes. That doesn't make me a celebrity. I am not a celebrity because I provide a service to a celebrity or a high public profiled person. And just remembering that you're there to the job. And I think that in the beauty space particularly, there's so many of us that in the beauty space want to become a celebrity that sorry, we talk about this all the time. They want to become the celebrity, so it's just like you start having these demands, and you're just like, I need this to show up, and and it's like, you are providing a service. Someone is paying you for your time, and remembering that is extremely important. So it's just about remembering who you are, being rooted in, you know, your culture. You know, for me, I think being first generation Habesha has really helped me in a space that isn't, you know, it's not common for Ethiopians or Eritreans or anybody to be, it's not a respected field to be in the beauty space. You know, like, I remember when I dropped out of college to move here to work with the Obamas, my parents were like, you're dropping out of college? And my dad didn't talk to me for like 3 months. He was like, I don't care who you're working for, you need to have a college degree. And that was what was important. And I do have a college degree, but I also am a successful entrepreneur. And so it's just, again, it's going back to feeling comfortable in who I am in my skin and knowing my passion, even though if it was a non-traditional way.
Nice. So we talked about authenticity, we talked about boundaries, and I want to talk a little bit about discipline. And so I'm going to come to you next, Eden, because it's one of those that's not as sexy, but I think discipline is a very important practice when it comes to self-care, whether it's fitness or the meditation or the journaling practice. It requires discipline. So I would love for you to talk to us about how you prioritize being so disciplined, not just as a bodybuilder, but as a mom, as someone who is in the cybersecurity space. I mean, there's a lot of things that you are juggling and, you know, quote unquote balancing. So how has discipline helped you to be successful in your self-care practice?
Right. If I start from the sport, bodybuilding, the sport itself requires discipline. There are days that you don't feel like going to the gym, you don't feel like following your meal plan, you don't feel like drinking a gallon of water or take your supplements. Especially, you know, close to competition, it's the hardest time because you have no social life, you know, your calories are reduced, the amount of exercise you're doing is increased, so your mood is not right. So that discipline kicks in. You need to have that. Discipline can be, in what way can I describe it? At work, you can have a very bad day and feeling very depleted, and then you still have to make it to the gym to make up that 1.5 hours heavy training, and then a cardio, follow up a cardio, and then come home and do the same type of food day in and day out. So without discipline, it's not possible. So we're all human, we fall short.
Right.
I'm not better than anybody else, but we just have to find that strength within us. We need to find that time. Anyone can say, well, I don't have time, you know, to the most, that is the biggest excuse, you know. I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to exercise, I don't have time to do that. But we can all find time. I always say this, if I can do it, anybody can do it. with the job requirement, you know, being a parent, and also doing bodybuilding and competition, you know, yeah. Being disciplined is really a key to me, yes.
Yeah, that's major. I love that. If you can do it, then we all can do it. That's really inspiring. Okay, so Delina, you wear a number of hats, including your work as a celebrity makeup artist, and those hats allow you to connect with women in very intimate ways. So I would love to hear from you about what themes you've noticed when speaking with women about their self-care. And, you know, because I'm sure by you talking to all different women, you're kind of noticing some trends or some threads. But also, what advice would you give to the woman who's here today or who's watching online who doesn't know where to start? So based off of your interactions and what you've heard, what can you share?
Yeah. So I really, you know, one of the things that I really enjoy is that there is a common thread between the people that I work with, and they are celebrities and actresses and things like that, but they're also business owners. And I think that that is what has always attracted me to them, and their ability to be able to organize ideas and to be a leader and to focus. But similar to Yane, like, boundaries are something that you learn by being around high performers, because you'll notice that when something's in the schedule, it's gonna be the way the schedule says, right? There are people around them to keep them in order, to make sure that things happen at 10 when it's supposed to happen at 10, this thing happens at 12 when it's supposed to happen at 12. So I feel like you get a chance to really be around high performers, see how they balance themselves. I had a client who was filming a show, and the only time that she could work out was at like 4 a.m. So she just woke up at 4 a.m. for like 6 months, right, to work out. And that's not something that people really do. You know, like, some people would be like, oh, well, I can't make that happen right now in this season, and I'm just gonna keep it moving. So I think that I get a chance to see discipline. I get a chance to see boundaries, right? Like, in action. And I think it inspires you to also do the same. Too. So, I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy making people feel good, but I think that entrepreneurship, like, the fact that all of them are entrepreneurs inspired me. I now have a podcast called It Takes a Village to Raise an Entrepreneur.
Nice.
And, yes. I'm looking at you because I'm like, I need you on this podcast ASAP. We're working on it. Okay, it's coming. But so the main focus of that is really to focus on creative entrepreneurs and how you can be creative and be an entrepreneur and be successful. Do the thing you love, but treat it like a business. You know, and so that's what I think I've really learned, is that it is possible, but you have to be able to say, like, no to certain things that don't fulfill what you're really supposed to be doing, because people will ask, right? They'll ask you for that bob when you're like, I have a self-care phase, right? So you have to be able to say no, and seeing that is great.
I love that nugget. Treat it like a business. I think caring for ourselves, being kind to ourselves, loving ourselves, that's our business. That's our number one priority. So I love how you were able to pull that together. So when Helen introduced us, before she introduced us, she shared that there was a high school group up here who did a performance. They did an amazing job, and I know that there are a lot of young people here in the audience, and so I would love to speak to the youth specifically. So I want you all to take yourselves back to high school, take yourself mentally back to high school, picture your high school self, and I want to know, what one piece of advice would you give yourself, the 10th grade Yane, the 11th grade Eden? What one piece of advice would you give that can help a young person right now to shift their mindset? Whoever wants to start can start.
I could start.
Okay.
So I went to hair school in high school.
Okay.
So I knew at a very early age that doing hair is what I wanted, despite the fact that socially and culturally it wasn't accepted. And it wasn't something that, you know, everyone's like, my parents were like, oh, you're gonna do hair, that's a cute hobby. Like, go ahead and do your little hobby, we'll support your hobby, but this is the trajectory in your life that you have to go on. And I think that it's important to trust yourself, your gut, and your voice. I'm happy that I did, but my career wasn't the normal career. Like, I was in hair school, and then I dropped out to go to college, and then I was working illegally without a license doing hair. Like, I always kind of had this side hustle on the side. and was doing what everyone else wanted me to do. So I think it's extremely important for you to listen to your inner voice, and to be curious and to explore whatever it is that you are possibly entertaining or an interest that you have, and just know that your intuition is right. You know what you want, you know what brings you joy, and listen to that.
That is so good. Sometimes as young people, it's like we're listening to everyone else's voice, our parents, people we love, those who are, raising us, and there's a transition at some point where you have to trust, where you go from kid to young adult, where you have to trust your own voice and your own intuition. And it's there even when you're a small child, it's just not cultivated. So that is so, so key.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። የምትመለከቱት ያላችሁት በኤምፓወር ዘ ኮሚኒቲ ዊኬንድ ጁላይ 1 ላይ እዚህ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ በተካሄደው ቆይታ the importance of self care የሚለውን ፓወር ፓነል ዲስከሽን ነው። እስቲ ወደዛ እንግዲህ ደሞ ልመልሳችሁ።
Who else wants to share what advice you'd give your younger self?
I would say a lot of times you find yourself comparing yourself in a space where you feel like you don't belong, where you don't see people that look like you. And I think what I've learned from high school me to 28-year-old Hermela, that you can be your own representation at whatever point of life. I used to work in finance where it was predominantly white men and women. I didn't see African American women, African women first, also big curly hair. Wearing my curly hair in a corporate world was a big no-no. I remember my mom asking if I was going to straighten my hair before my interview, and I said no. Why show up looking like someone else that's not me? So my biggest advice I'd give myself is you can be your own representation in a space where you feel like you don't belong. You can be the first one to look like yourself in a space where you might not feel comfortable. And I think feeling uncomfortable is a thing that we should all feel in our life. Feeling comfortable doesn't allow us to grow. You're kind of stuck in a space where mentally you've plateaued in life. So feeling uncomfortable allows you to grow in different aspects. So I would just say love the way you look and allow yourself to be uncomfortable in spaces.
Very good. Others?
I can go. Okay. So I went to NC State University. I was a chemistry graduate, and I think that ideally you would think that I would go into that field and that would be what I ended up doing. And I decided to similarly make a switch. Parents did talk to me also for a little bit. Moving into makeup was a big deal. Like changing into something that was artistic was a big deal. And I think that it's really important to remember that you have to learn. I love talking to younger people, and I'm really excited that we're doing this actually because something that I learned that I feel like younger people don't necessarily lean into is to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. I learned that from my mom. She's an incredible advocate. I remember when I had $100 in my bank account and I it went down to zero, and she was like, we're going to go into the bank, dress up, we're going to talk to them, and we're going to make sure we get this together for you. So I feel like when it comes to school, I have a cousin of mine recently that was applying to school and she was waitlisted, and we ended up talking on the phone, and I was like, waitlisted doesn't mean rejected, right? Waitlisted means like there's still a possibility. So finding a way to have a conversation with the dean, which she did, and being able to talk to them and say, okay, I can advocate for myself. I want to be at this university. You have the ability to shift things. Just because your career, maybe you're in school right now and maybe you don't have, an excellent GPA, that doesn't mean anything. Remember that school is a place where you can create a network, and to understand that go to the best school that you get into so that you can create the best network that you can create. And what you're going to be able to do is be able to change change everything.
The trajectory.
Yeah. But you can advocate for yourself at any age.
That's so good.
Yeah.
It's the same push through mentality that Eden was talking about, or the same push through mentality that your clients have getting up at 4 in the morning. Like, discipline also requires grit. Like, it also requires that we get after it. Like, you have a goal, whatever that goal may be, you have the power to push through and make that thing happen. So that's really good. All right, Eden.
So I want to say two things. In my professional area, which is cybersecurity, I'm one of the senior cybersecurity engineer out of 12 male. So as being the only woman, you get pushbacks. And then, so, you know, I just want to look into what she said. I'll be an advocate for yourself. The sky is the limit. If the will is there, everything can be done.
That's right.
You can achieve whatever you want. You can do that. When it comes to bodybuilding, I might be the first bodybuilder, but I know I'm not going to be the last.
That's right.
To come. Especially, you know, in our community, it's not a well-developed sport. You know, lady might not have the concepts about bodybuilding that, you know, you can push through, you can make it.
That's good. That's very good. So we know that we're not just speaking to the audience that's here today in the room with us, but that our conversation will be broadcast abroad as well. Is there any final thoughts or things that you want to share with our audiences back home who are listening to this, who maybe some of these concepts are new or different or not as culturally accepted? Any final remarks that you would want to share with somebody who might be watching us on a screen?
I guess. I think I've learned that we share a lot of things in common where we followed the path that our parents wanted us to go down. What was the normal, what was the American dream. I had a degree in finance. You said chemistry?
Yeah.
Yena, you went to school, dropped out, and you also made it to being a manager at where you work, where it's male dominated. So for us, I think the discipline, massive, but I think listening to what you want and allowing what your dreams and desires are so important. I think sometimes we live for others to please or to make them happy. I quit my finance job during COVID.
Wow.
Right. So I too had to fight a lot of pushback from the outside world. So I think it's okay to not know what's next. I think taking that leap and that faith in yourself, you'll always win. It might not come to you immediately, but as long as you have the drive, the discipline, and the will to learn, I think you'll always end up on top. So I think that's my biggest advice to give. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. And being okay with the evolution. I have a similar story. My undergraduate degree is in biology. Now I'm a gift shop owner, you know,
Exactly.
so you never know how the journey is going to take you.
Right.
Just trusting the process and not being so rigid, I think, is very important. Other thoughts for those who might be watching?
Thinking outside the box, I think I haven't been back home. Last time I was in Ethiopia was in September, and I visited quite often because my husband lived there at one point, and there's so much change and so much progress and so much that's changing on the continent of Africa as a whole.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there are many of us in the US market that are really connecting and understanding the opportunities that are there. And the opportunities, like Carmela was saying, doesn't have to be the traditional trajectory of your career path. It can be going into a tech field, or it can also be going into a trade and exploring more creative spaces. And I think particularly in Ethiopia, I'm seeing so much more creative spaces and innovation coming out of the country and then on the continent as well. So it's really about, you know, pushing through to whatever it is that you believe, having faith and trusting yourself, and pushing through any adversity. I think it makes us stronger, and just because things don't work out the first time doesn't mean that it's not going to work out. It's just maybe you have to rethink it or revisit it and reposition it, or, you know, sit back, go back to the drawing board and re-strategize, and then go back and pitch it again. So just keep pushing and keep believing, and don't limit yourself and put yourself into a box.
Nice.
I would say, like, I think culturally we're, like, one of the most beautiful things about us is that we're very humble.
Yes.
But I think, like, also culturally that can hold you back, especially if you're here in the States. And so, like, I find that finding a way to connect with people and build and really focus on, like, being humble is great, and it allows you to be able to create community, which is really good.
Yeah.
And I think that is the strength. It's like, don't go against maybe your nature, right? Like Yene works with like so many people, and like she was saying earlier, she was talking about how she's always been this way. I've known her for a very long time. She's always been this way. Like there's no change. So it's like, but there's this ability, right, where she's humble, but she's also still creating, and she's still like pushing the needle forward. And I think that like we have the ability to be able to utilize that community, right, and still drive forward and still honor who we are as a community.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just want to piggyback on community. It's important to look into the community that you have. I think so many of us think that we have to connect with this far-fetched person. More often than not, if you look right within your own network, your own family, your own household, and the community that's around you, like I grew up in California, if I think back to like my childhood friends and the people I grew up with in church, there are so many people doing amazing things. So really relying on the community, there's so many benefits to network.
Very good. Ida?
Yeah, I'll be very simple. They say, take care of your body, it will take care of you. So, you know, do what it takes to care for yourself. Now, we talked about self-care, exercising, emotional health, all that, and then, you know, all the benefits as you get older, it will take care of you.
Very good, yeah. And I'll add to that, which is not forgetting where we come from. There is so much, and you talked about this, Delina, but richness and beauty in our culture, in our communities, within our families, within our religious practices. There's so much that we can glean and pull from that. Not trying to, you know, express yourself as someone who's from somewhere else, but being grateful and happy for your authentic self and where you're from. Honoring that and celebrating that in and of itself is a huge form of self-love, self-acceptance, self-compassion, and self-care. So thank you, ladies, so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and for engaging with us today. We appreciate you. Thank you.
እዚህ ዝግጅት ላይ ስንሳተፍ የመጀመሪያ ጊዜያችን ነው። Our first time ለሁለተኛ ጊዜ ነው። ሶስተኛ ዓመታችን ነው። አራተኛ ጊዜያችን ነው። ከተጀመረ ጀምሮ ፓርቲሲፔት እያደረግን ነው። ከብዙ ሰዎች ጋር ኮኔክት አድርገናል። ጥሩ ድጋፍንም አግኝተንበታል። One of the best events ብዙ ክላይንቶች አግኝተናል። በጣም ደስ ብሎናል እዚህ በመሆናችን።